And we have Andrew Lake of Greenville Paranormal Research joining us here in the studio tonight. How are you tonight, Andy?
Howdy, gentlemen. Good to be here.
We're glad you can come in anytime. You're always welcome. I'd say the door is always open, but as you can see, it's kind of a process to get in. So, but just knock on the window. We'll let you in. And we have Andrew here tonight because we're going to be talking about an upcoming fundraiser that you'll be kind of hosting. You'll be leading a tour in the Freetown State Forest. Why don't we tell everybody about that right now?
Yeah, that's right. Because Christopher Balzano now lives in Florida, I am now the cardboard stand-in for Chris when anybody wants to know something about Freetown. And a group called Encore got in touch with me via Chris, and they're putting on some ghost tours of the Freetown State Forest in June, 2 Fridays in June, to raise money for music equipment and musical education for kids in the Fall River, New Bedford area.
And the gentleman, Brian, who put this together, I remember him trying to get in touch with us last year because he was trying to put this together, and things kind of fell through with that group that he was working with before. But now it seems like he's got a more solid base, a more solid plan, and it sounds like a great idea. The thing that I'm worried about is, what are you going to encounter in the Freetown State Forest that isn't paranormal?
Yeah, I know. I have brought that up. But I think safety in numbers.
Yeah, probably. That's probably the best way to do it. Now, what do you have planned for this tour? What are you focusing on for hotspots?
We're going to be focusing on the reservation area, right off Bell Rock Road. Forest Entry Road. There are 3 hotspots in that immediate area, and then we're going to move right down to the Assonet Ledge, and of course the area between the Assonet Ledge and the reservation has also been known for weird activity. Ron Kolick and his group can attest to that, as well as Chris Balzano. They encountered something between the ledge and the reservoir area that we still don't know what it was.
And it seems like for everybody that's tried to get out there and find these places, it's easy to get lost in the state forest, especially if it's your first time being in there.
Yes.
So to actually have a guided tour, to have somebody that can take you through, point out where the activity has happened, and to have the proceeds that actually go and benefit a worthwhile cause, it's even better.
Which is great, yeah.
Now, when you're out, now this is going to be, you said at night.
Yes.
So
starting at 7:30, and there will be a midnight tour for the real brave.
And how is it going to work? Walking tour? Are we taking vehicles?
Yeah, they're bringing vehicles, but the reservation is very easy to cover on foot. Everything's within a few hundred yards of each other.
I'm assuming everything's been cleared through the park rangers.
Yes.
Is there any concern with going out there at that time of night? You're going to encounter wildlife. You're going to encounter wildlife.
Yeah. Well, like I said, my experience has been safety in numbers.
But I mean, just in terms of the safety of driving vehicles around. I mean,
yeah.
Moniz can tell you what happens when you're driving at night and the deer decide to come out.
Yeah, I'd let Brian know ahead of time that we should have some vehicles that can clear the ground. I drive a Jeep, so I can take at least 3 people. But I believe he's already looked into that. He went and visited the area to see what I was talking about. Forest Entry Road, both upper and lower ledge road, can be pretty treacherous.
Is there a limit to how many people you're going to be taking with you?
I believe it's going to be, I think, 15 people tops each tour.
And how much are the tickets to go?
$35.
So that's
which
not
is
bad
very reasonable, because they will get their money's worth. The Freetown State Forest is a very spooky place, especially after sundown.
Yeah.
And there's enough stories to keep them entertained. And who knows? After my first night there with Chris and Ron Kolick and his group, it was a freaky night.
Just don't lock your keys in your trunk.
Oh yes, that's a whole nother story. Yeah, do not lock your keys in your trunk, because AAA will not be able to find you for hours.
And that was Chris was supposed to be going to a book signing in Dartmouth, then coming here into the studio that same night, and we're saying, what's happening? What's going on?
Matt and I were going to do an investigation in Acushnet, and there's no way we leaving Chris there, because we figured the Puckwudgies would get him, and that's it.
They're like, we've been waiting for you.
That's right. But tell you real quick. Who was it? It was Aaron Cashew, the filmmaker, local filmmaker. He was interviewing Chris, taking advantage of the fact that Chris couldn't go anywhere. So we set up this little makeshift outdoor studio to shoot Chris, and the lights were getting down, and I had a little spotlight, 4 video cameras. We rigged this thing up, and it was right when Chris was talking about Anawan Rock, and of course how the Europeans betrayed the Wampanoags, and right when he came to a final conclusion about King Philip and the betrayal and the surrender at Anawan Rock and the missing wampum belt, the light went off like right on cue, and we could not get it back on. And we could finally
Until he apologized.
Yeah, until he apologized. It was pretty freaky. We think the Wampanoags were with us that night, and they locked Chris's keys in the car.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because, coming up in June, we're going to have our annual Bridgewater Triangle investigation episode. And I'd like to take things a little bit there. I haven't talked with the guys about this, so we'll kind of work it out here on the air. But I want to take a different approach with it. In the last few years, we've really focused on all the different paranormal hotspots. We've talked about, the school children that you can see in the Hornbein School windows. We talked about so many different, spectral aspects of the area, of the entire, Bridgewater Triangle. And I'd like to kind of put this year's focus on the battles of King Philip's War, on the spirits of the Native Americans, and really get in depth with the history. And in that vein, I've made contact with Michael Tugayas, who actually wrote a book about King Philip's War. And I want to be able I think I'm going to have to pre-record an interview with him because he's a busy guy. He's got another book coming out as well. But we'll get something on with him talking about the history of the war. We'll bring Aaron in, who can talk about some of the research that he's done for his film, The First Patriots, and we'll send teams out to some of these hotspots where it's directly related to King Philip and to his people and to the actual battles that happened in this war. So, I think, this might be a good chance to educate people while using, as we like to do, using the paranormal as a hook to kind of teach them about the history.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea.
So, are you in?
Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
We're gonna need all the help we can get. So teams, I've already made contact with a few of you, but if you'd like to join us for the Bridgewater Triangle investigation episode, it'll be happening at the end of June. There's 1 week where the Red Sox, and I can check during the break, but there's 1 week where the Red Sox are playing an early afternoon game, so we know that we'll be able to get on at 10 o'clock. We'll probably be able to get on at 9 o'clock if we want to go 3 hours, which I think we probably will. And if you want to get involved, just email me, Tim at SpookySouthcoast.com, and we'll make sure that we get in touch with as many people as we can, because I know that there's not a lot of areas out there where we know for sure that a battle definitely took place. I know that it's hard to pinpoint the exact locations. We just have a lot of monuments that are related to the people and related to the stories of the war. But if we can try to cover as many of those places, and as we've said before, Moniz, pretty much everywhere was a battle at some point in that very brief and bloody war.
Well, Matt and I were just talking about this today, the fact that in Rhode Island there were 2 awful moments in the King Philip's War that are very haunted. We have the park down in the Great Swamp Fight, a monument down in Charleston. The park is closed at sunset, but I have heard that rangers say you don't want to be in there after sunset because of the things they see. And, of course, in Cumberland, you have the 9 Men's Misery, the first memorial to soldiers in North America. Not technically the U.S. Army. They were militia, but they were captured by the Indians after raiding Warwick and Providence, and they led the militia into a trap, and 9 men were captured by the Indians, and they were brutally killed in Cumberland, and they haunt the site.
So, we talk about the ever-expanding scope of the Bridgewater Triangle. Maybe we need to cover those two
Chris, this is what
locations.
Chris talks about, because Cumberland was actually part of Rehoboth in the Plymouth colonies.
All right, so then
Cumberland,
that
Rhode
counts.
Island was part of Rehoboth at one point.
That counts, so we'll cover those 2 points. We'll try, we should get in touch with those park rangers and see if maybe we can make some special arrangements.
This is something I've been wanting to do because of the stories I've been hearing.
So maybe that's a good perspective for you guys to handle, because Moniz, if we're gonna send somebody into a situation where it's a first time investigation, I'd like to send the 2 most experienced, trusted investigators that we have out to those spots, and then that way there, if the park rangers change their mind while you're out there.
Like with Andy, I've already been out to these locations a number of times. I work in Cumberland, Rhode Island to start with, so I've been down to...
Yeah, that's right. Matt works right near it.
Yeah, I've been down to 9 Men's Misery a couple of times. I've been to the area. I haven't been out to where the monument is for the Great Swamp Fire, because what they did, unfortunately, as Andy will verify, the Indians built basically it's a barricade around their settlement, and all the women and children were outside the barricade at the time that the settlers and the militia set fire to the swamp. So they killed a lot of innocent women and children, as well as people.
The number could be as high as 200.
Wow. Yeah. Well, then it definitely sounds like you're the team to send out to those locations. And I think that if we focus on the war and we focus on the history of that, I just got a feeling that maybe it'll make some kind of connection with the spirits. I know we've had that happen before, where I know that Luann and Whaling City Ghosts, when they were out at Anawan Rock, the way that they approached that investigation, they were very respectful. They were very reverential to what had happened there, and they got a lot in response to that. And I think that if we actually show understanding, we show not appreciation, but we show
respect.
Yes,
basically
respect.
We show that we still care about the history of something that is forgotten. It is a forgotten war, and I think if we show that, we might actually help make a connection, and it'll be an interesting approach, and hopefully people will come away learning something that they didn't know about before. Because I know every time I talk about it, I'm learning more and more about it.
Yeah, I just recently sent some of Whaling City Ghosts EVP recordings to an EVP expert I know, John Hardy of Price Paranormal, and he was able to pull more EVPs out of their recordings.
Wow.
Luann was like, couldn't believe it. They were like, can we get in touch with this guy personally? Can you give us your email? This guy's unbelievable. But the bird call, did you hear the bird call EVP?
Yep.
Well, when that was cleaned up, you also clearly hear a male voice say Nitomp, which means friend. And that was what they kept saying all night long to show respect while they were there. And not only did they get Kitumpog being sung in a powwow kind of chorus, they got a male voice close to them saying Nitomp, which
Nice.
I thought they showed their respect, and it drew things out that night. They got a lot of evidence that night.
And Luann, I'm sure you're listening, but hopefully get those to us, and we'll make sure that we play them on the show. And, of course, Whaling City Ghosts, as long as they're available, they'll definitely be one of the teams that are out there because they've got the right approach, I think, to making sure that they can make that connection. Is there anything, and we're just free-forming it here tonight about the paranormal, so if you'd like to join in at any point and discuss with us, feel free to call in 508-996-0500. 508-291-0500, anything regarding the paranormal. You can also email us spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com, and we can take your question that way. Also, Justin TV is broadcasting. If you go to justin.tv/spookysouthcoast, or you just click on the Spooky TV logo at the front page of spookysouthcoast.com, you can get the in-studio video feed, and you can submit questions in the chat room there as well. Those are the ways to get a hold of us. And we can talk about really anything. I do have a few stories that I want to touch upon a little bit later on in the night. And, of course, we have the Week in Weird as well. But with this, I don't want to say this newfound understanding, this newfound appreciation for King Philip's War, but I don't remember hearing about it when I was in school. We never learned about it. Andy in Rhode Island, I don't know if it was a different story.
No, I was in my mid-20s doing deliveries for Kent County Memorial Hospital, and I was down in Charleston, and I looked over, and this memorial caught my eye, and it was to the King Philip's War. And the first person I asked about it was like, yeah, wasn't that the King of England at the time or something? There's nobody. No, there was this memorial that just was off to the side of the road, well, signed to the main memorial. And when I asked around about it, people were like, "Oh, I don't know what that's all about." So I was rather, embarrassed, when I found out that this was something that was not being addressed.
I remember King Philip's Beach. I remember King Philip High School. But don't ask me where King Philip's Beach was. I just remember going there as a kid. I have no idea where it was. But, that was my only exposure to it. And I had no idea who this King Philip character was. And knowing about history as much as I'd learned, I went to school in my early days in Plymouth. So I'm learning about Squanto, I'm learning about, Miles Standish, and I'm learning about all the, the good part of the Pilgrim Native American history. I'm not learning about the dark side of it. And even there, it was never mentioned. I never heard Metacom when I was there.
No.
I never heard any of that stuff. And I'm embarrassed myself that I actually went to school in America's hometown, and it was never mentioned in history class. I took, 3 years of U.S. history in high school, including, not to brag, but 2 years of advanced placement history, and not once did it come up in any of those classes. It is embarrassing. It's a shame that it's not taught. Maybe we need to help develop some sort of curriculum for it with a lot of these people that we know that are going out there doing the research, Andrew, yourself included, and start developing something that the schools can actually utilize in some fashion.
Yeah.
Even if it's just, getting Aaron Cadju's film into schools so that people can see it. But there has to be something done. How many people out there have heard of King Philip's War besides on this show? Give us a call, 508-996-0500, 508-291-0500. Matt, you want to take a break? All right, why don't we take a break? When we come back, we'll talk more about the paranormal. We'll take your calls. We'll just keep kicking it around here on Spooky South Coast. I will mention to those who, might not understand exactly what King Philip's War was all about, I'll just give you a brief synopsis. It was basically the first war fought on what became American soil, and it was between the Native American people and the English settlers. Because hey, guess what? The English settlers lied to the Native Americans. Can you believe that? So, and we've talked about it here on the show before, and I mentioned that, it's not something that's taught in schools. We are trying to educate people. This tour that's coming up of the Freetown State Forest, I'm sure will include a lot of information about King Philip's War. And if people want to get involved and get one of those spots, and they are going to go fast, you can email us, spookykrew@spookysouthcoast.com, and we'll pass the information on to Brian, who's organizing the event. And now, when you are out there and you're bringing people around and you're trying to show them these hot spots, are they going to actually be getting out of the vehicles, investigating themselves?
Oh, yeah, certainly, yeah, because the parking area in the reservation is right there. I mean, you pull right off Bell Rock Road, plenty of parking right there. The building right in front of you, the visitor center, which is always closed, it never seems to be open, that has been a hot spot for paranormal activity.
So you're going to just tether a rope from one person to the next, and everybody hangs on?
And then we shall walk probably only about 100 yards into the woods to the powwow meeting area. Mm-hmm. There's a sort of a covered eating place, sort of like a picnic area where they can set up, barbecue grills and that sort of thing, and sit at benches in numbers. But only about maybe 50 yards behind that in the woods in a pine clearing, there is another powwow meeting area. And there's been many strange things seen in both locations by many people, even during the day.
And it's important to note, for one thing, it's going to be dark. It's going to be very dark, because even in these areas, they're so heavily wooded, and now this time of year, where the trees are starting to come back to life, and you're not going to get as much moonlight as you would, in the fall. So it will be dark. So definitely dress appropriately. Wear something reflective so that if somebody's shining their flashlight,
plenty of bug
absolutely.
Spray.
Especially in that area, which luckily we're not quite into Triple E season yet, but that is a very big area for mosquitoes. And also, one other thing for people that might be concerned about this, you've heard the stories about the cult activity and the drug activity that goes on out there, and a lot of that stuff doesn't happen in the areas where you are. It's going to be that stuff happens in the deeper forest, where it's away from where the regular patrols would be.
Actually, everybody I've ever run into that forest has been anything but creepy. Everybody I've met, even a group of hunters with shotguns back in November, were awful friendly, which I appreciated because I wasn't armed at the time.
And when you tell them that you're out there hunting too, just something different.
Well, one of the park rangers had come by when I was there in November, and Matt and I were helping a film crew out in the area from Philadelphia, and one of the park rangers came by and drove through the woods just to let them know there was going to be a bunch of crazy people looking for ghosts and UFOs out in the woods, and to look out for them. But they were clearing out by the time we got there.
And that's true. And that time of year, you must have to wear safety orange.
Yeah.
While you're out there. Although Moniz probably goes out there with his antler headset there, which he probably dug out of the side of his car that time.
Yeah, really.
I mean, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding too about the Freetown State Forest for those who have never been in it. It's not like, when you go to Miles Standish and you're driving these well-paved roads and you're going from campsite to campsite to pond, or some of these other state forests where it's kind of like a nice leisurely cut through to get from one spot to another. I mean, this is kind of remote.
It is.
And you only have to go about 5 feet in and you're off the beaten path.
And it is the dark forest.
Now, when you're out there and you're doing your investigations, I mean, how much activity have you come across, besides what we've seen captured on video or...
I would think the thing that I missed, but I was on the investigation that night, was Ron Kolick's group brought a FLIR imager with them.
Mm-hmm.
And as they were going from the powwow site through the woods using a GPS system so they wouldn't get lost by the cover of a full moon, they were scanning the woods with the FLIR imager and watched a distortion form a few yards away from them in the forest. Now,
wow.
the FLIR imager clearly shows the gray and white features of the trees and the shrubbery and the space between it, and this anomaly just formed right in front of them, and slowly but surely got about 4 feet in length, and they swear it had a face on it, and it started to come towards them. When they told Chris and I that story, because we went in with my Jeep with all the camera equipment we were carrying, we weren't going to hike through the woods with all this camera equipment, and when they had told us the story about it, later that night as we were going back, I took Ron and the ladies back, and Chris walked back with the group. And when they got roughly in the same vicinity where they had seen it earlier, they fired up the FLIR again, and there it was in a different spot. And
Right.
Chris got to see it before Ron Kolick's guys took off like Scooby-Doo and, ran off with the $10,000 imager. So Chris only got about maybe a 3-second glimpse, but he said the thing was freaky.
That might have been enough.
Yeah.
3 seconds
Yeah.
might have been enough. And when you're out there, you're doing these investigations, you're checking out this area. I mean, obviously the fact that it's very creepy, that kind of enters into your mind as well. But also just the natural things you have to be afraid of, the natural things you have to be, I don't want to say afraid of, but aware of.
Yes.
I mean, you never know when you're going to fall into a
Deer
sinkhole.
ticks.
Ticks. I mean, Matt and I went out there, Matt Koss and I went out there one day, and this is classic. This is like the classic story of an adventure between me and Costa. This is, I can't, from truck surfing to, all the different crazy stuff we've done. This probably takes the cake. It's just being like the dumbest thing ever. But we got to the ledge and we wanted to go to the top, and we hiked. For the first time probably in 10 years, we hiked up the side of the ledge to get to the top. Then when we got to the top, we're like, oh, look, there's a road.
Yeah.
We could have just driven.
Upper Ledge Road. Yeah, we'll take you up there.
But we needed the work. I remember I had that brand new knife, and I lost the sheath because I fell down. And, I just barely missed stabbing the crap out of my leg. The knife goes flying. I could never find the sheath again. I think I ended up making you take the knife home because I was afraid to have it out of the sheath. But
it wasn't really easy getting up there either.
No, it wasn't. We were pulling on vines and stepping through
scaling rocks. And...
Yeah. I'm impressed that we did it.
Yeah.
I'm proud of us. But I'm also embarrassed for us because we're stupid.
We live, we learn.
But, I mean, and we had never been really deep out there before. That was our first time, getting out that far. How do we even find it anyway?
I have no idea.
I have a natural sense of direction that I trust when I'm driving a car and I'm on roads. But when I get out into the woods like that, it gets
easy.
It
It's
gets
easy to get
disorienting.
Yeah.
And like you said, Ron's group, they brought out GPS, and thankfully, everybody has these days a GPS unit in their cell phone. So if they ever got really stuck and really lost, somebody would be able to find you, provided that cell phone works out there.
Yeah. Well, it's the first thing the pug wedgies are going to grab.
Yeah. and those, in that area, it's so easy. 1 minute you'll have 4 bars, and you'll be like, I'm going to call all my friends, tell them to come out here. And then the next second, nothing. And we're so overconnected in society now that I think nothing scares us more than when we're out in the woods in the dark and all of a sudden we look and we see that little red X next to the antenna on the cell phone. Yeah. When you're out there, I mean, is there other precautions that you take? Besides alerting the guards and letting them know that you're going to be out there, and if by morning somebody happens to stumble across your body, but what else can you do if you're an investigator going out there, knowing that you're going to lose that cell phone signal? Is there other ways that you can be sure that you can get around? I mean, are there marked trees if there's a path back to a road? Are there white?
Well, we'll stick close by a forced entry road.
But I mean, just in general, when you're out there,
are
there markers that you can use to find yourself back?
No. You got to be very careful. Like I said, I try to keep the road close at hand, close in mind. I would when Kolick's group went from the reservation to the ledge through the woods under a full moon like that. Chris and I were like, we may never see him again. Yeah. We had walkie-talkies to keep in touch with them, and it was like the typical when they were encountering that entity, their radios were cutting out bad. So it was kind of like, aliens where the radio's cutting out and you don't know what's happening to the other team. Are they getting decimated by some paranormal force or what? But Chris and I started to panic a little bit because it was like, we ran into something and, oh, my God. And he was like, whoa, what's going on out there?
That's when we, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too early until things are formally approved, but we've been working with the Wareham Historical Society to be able to open up the Fearing Tavern for public investigation to raise money for the Historical Society. And one of the first things that, I realized when I'm trying to put this all together is, holy crap, we better have radios because we're going to be checking out 3 different areas immediately around that area. And if anything happens, we need to be able to get the word out from one to the other. And usually, though, when you think about it, and I'm sure you guys have used it many times to investigate, that's usually the first thing to go.
Yeah.
It's the first battery to get drained. It's the first thing to cut out and get static. But still, you can't not have them.
Right.
I mean, look at when we used them in Lizzie Borden's house. Not only do we pick up the house phone over it, not only do we pick up every truck driving by on the highway, which is only a stone's throw from there, we're getting. I think we get Fall River Police over them. We get the pizza
Baby
delivery.
monitors.
Yeah, I was just gonna say baby monitors are infamous. Yeah.
It's just in that area. It's so active with so many different signals. But I wouldn't feel comfortable going around without it.
No.
Because perfect case in point, when we were there with Jeanette,
Yep.
and we were investigating, and we had stuff happening up on, we're up on the second floor, and when we're on the second floor, stuff's happening in the basement. And when we're in the basement, stuff's happening on the upper floors, and it's just, it loves to play in that regard to make sure that it's not where you are. So you have to have that radio. Okay, where are you? Where are you?
Yeah.
But, like you said, it's the first thing to go.
Yeah. And flashlights. That's why I always keep a shaker flashlight as well as a standard flashlight.
Yeah, that's the.
I like what Tom D'Agostino says about the shaker flashlights. He says the ghost can keep draining it, but I can just shake it again. So one of us is going to give in eventually,
That's the one thing that I think is taken for granted the most is the flashlights, because we always have our cell phones with us.
Right.
So we can always just hit the button and use that if we have to.
Yeah. And it's good because it's low lighting. It doesn't mess up your night vision too bad, like a bright white flashlight does.
And at least in my limited experience investigating, it's the one battery that I've never had get drained is the cell phone. Everything else, well, that's because you don't charge yours. No, but you have had it happen where
Waverly Hills.
Oh God, yeah.
Well, that's those ghosts are hungry. They're looking for anything. But it just seems like, at least that the cell phone is kind of the last, outlet. You always have that. Mine has a voice recorder built in, so I know I can always use that, even though it's not, the best quality. At least I have something. So if my batteries go dead on my recorder, I have something.
Well, in a nighttime investigation, like in the Freetown State Forest, I am going to be bringing my night scope monocle with me. It doesn't help you find ghosts, but if you got something moving around the woods around you, you can find out, is it a raccoon? Is it a deer?
Is it a coyote like
it
we
oh,
encountered?
Yeah, we're at the Ramtail in Foster on Halloween night, and the alpha male of coyotes shows up on the path in front of Matt and I, and we didn't know if it was Beelzebub or Mother Nature. We didn't know what we looked, and this thing did not want to back off from us. We actually rushed it to make it leave, and it was like, I didn't think there.
It stood its ground.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I thought maybe we were going to be turning around and running.
I would not mess with a coyote.
Halloween night at one of the most haunted sites in Rhode Island, and this thing shows up.
And these eyes were very large, very close, and this was not a small animal.
They were close to us, but far apart.
Yeah.
Meaning there was a large head that thing was attached to. Yeah.
I live in kind of a haunted area of Wareham that you've probably done
I know
investigations
haunted. That town is crawling with ghosts.
But where I live, the only thing that I'm afraid of are the coyotes.
Yeah.
Because I go to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there's times when you go out there and you can hear them shuffling around.
But the truth is, a coyote is a pretty skittish creature. That's why it threw Matt and I that this one didn't act skittish. This is the first time I've ever encountered one that stood its ground for a couple of seconds.
Normally, you open the door and you slam the screen door and they take off.
Yep, they're gone. Yeah.
But when you're out there and you're on their turf, it's probably a little bit of a different story anyway.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Hey, you're in our neighborhood now. There.
Yeah.
Pink boy.
It's like that line in Kindergarten Cop. You're not so tough without your car, are you?
Yeah.
So, but it just sounds like you're covering all the bases in terms of safety, in terms of what you're putting out. So there's no reason why people shouldn't sign up for this.
Oh no.
And like you said, all the proceeds go to benefit music education.
That's right. There's Encore program, which is to get kids instruments, give them the training, and then also to encourage national and even international competition.
I remember when I was younger, and I went through school, you could sign up. You went to instrument night. All the parents came, and you could sign up to take a lesson. And your parents paid something. I think it was like $40 a month or whatever for you to get an instrument. And you paid it out over the course of the school year, and then it was yours. And you got lessons in school, and you got all this. And they don't have that anymore.
No.
Now if you have an instrument, it's because your parents went out and dropped the cash down at a music store to get it for you. You have to take private lessons from a music shop, and there's no more true music education. Beyond that, when you get somebody as great as Dartmouth High School, which has a phenomenal band that's played in like the Rose Bowl parade, and I think they played in the Macy's parade.
Wow.
Yeah, and somebody has to support that, and the money just isn't there for it, unfortunately. Especially in Dartmouth, where they have such great athletic programs. A lot of that money, it's sometimes it's not an even balance between baseball, football, basketball, band. So to be able to help raise awareness and raise money for music education, it's one of the, it's I'm sorry to say, it's the first thing to go when cuts have to be made. I went through it when I was in elementary school, when I lived over on the Cape, and they came through and they cut extracurricular activities. Like, well, we can't cut gym. You have to have at least, so many hours of gym a week. So we have to give you that. Art, we can cut that. Music, we can cut that. And, that was completely gone from the curriculum. And at least then there was nobody getting out there and putting together fundraisers like this to try and raise the money. So we love to talk about the paranormal. We love to go out and do these investigations, but when it can actually have more of a benefit for other people, I think it makes it even more worthwhile. And somebody who, might be the biggest skeptic in the world still might go because they support the cause. Yeah. And then you can show them something to change their mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's why we're trying to put together these nights with the Wareham Historical Society, because they're just not getting people going through that building. And, we spent time there. We spent a number of hours there, and every time we turn the corner, we see something else. We're like, that's so cool. Yeah. But unfortunately, the general public just doesn't come up with it. Hey, if I go spend $6 or $3, whatever it is, take a tour, I'm going to see something really neat.
Yeah. Well, his footage actually wound up being one of the high points to when we did the reveal from that.
That was very strange. That light. Very strange.
To see all these people's faces when they see it, it's like these are people that go through that building every day, leading tours, and for them to say, okay, I'm not sure I want to go back in there at night anymore.
Oh, I didn't get any negativity from that house at all.
No. But I mean, if you're not familiar with the paranormal and it's your first experience with it,
well, just the fact there's no electricity in the house and we had to wander around the dark using our little flashlights and cell phone lights. It was
like one outlet, I think.
Yeah.
And we're feeding everything, which is going to be great, by the way, when we go to do that filming, because everybody's going to need to charge up everything.
No, I'm bringing a battery the size of a Volkswagen that'll last for about 12 hours.
There you go. We've also got access to the building behind it.
Oh, neat.
We've got keys to that, the metal building with the food inside. Yeah, we've got the keys, so if we ever need to charge up.
Which is haunted.
Yeah, it's haunted by the hopes and dreams of the people that live where the future goes to die. Matt, are we all set on breaks for this hour, or should we take another one? Okay. Well, let me get your perspective as somebody that's been out in the Freetown State Forest, Matt Costa, and been out there and kind of experienced it. I know we haven't really been out there in the dark because we're wussies. But oh, you're kidding me? I'm thinking about tagging along on this thing. It sounds great.
What another thought? We brought bikes that time. We never used them.
We did bring our bikes. And how long have we been talking about, hey, this Friday, I don't have anything to do, you don't have anything to do, let's go out to the state forest and ride our bikes around. We never get to do it. But, we went out there a few times and we had our adventures. But what's your feelings of the state forest and what's going on out there?
It's definitely like a more unusual place than anywhere around here. I think it has a different type of feel than any other state forest that I've been to. I mean, I've been to the Miles Standard State Forest plenty of times, and
Shawnee Kroll over on the Cape. I'm sure you've been through that.
And it just has like a different type of feel,
And this is coming from our skeptic, for him to go in there and say that it feels weird.
It seems darker at night too.
Oh God,
I don't know.
Definitely,
it's like pitch black.
Yeah.
And in that whole area, I mean, when we went to the Freetown Historical Society and we gave our presentation there, I don't even think, had we even been out in the state forest by then? I don't think we had been.
I'm not sure.
But even that night, we're out there talking about how creepy it feels, and that's, about a half a mile out?
Not even.
Not even? All right, well, let's go to the phones here. We have somebody on the line. Good evening. You are on Spooky Southcoast. How you doing?
Hi, how are you, Tim?
Oh, spooktacular. How are you?
I'm good. I was lonely in the chat room.
Nobody's in there with you?
No, nobody wants to come and visit me, I guess.
You know what the problem is we couldn't get on to the internet to announce that we were actually going to be on the air tonight.
Oh.
So Twitter was down, which is
darn.
The one way that most people know, and I think you'll see that some people will probably pop on during the course of the show. They're just expecting us not to actually start on time. People in other areas that don't know the Red Sox schedule are like, well, there's probably a game. I know they have to run the post game now, so I'm going to wait a little while.
Yeah, no Red Sox tonight.
But you're somebody, Luann, who's been out in these areas and been around the Freetown State Forest. What's your impression and your feeling of it?
Oh, I love the Freetown State Forest. I actually have never been there in the nighttime either. I've only been during the day, but
we'll have to change that.
It definitely has a feeling. There is one other state forest, though, that gives me a feeling like that. That is the Pashog State Forest down in Connecticut. I don't know if you remember, I did put pictures up once on your forum, I believe. But yeah, it definitely does have a feel to it. I have to agree about that.
Is it kind of a dark feeling to you? I mean, I know with your experiences, you've kind of encountered a number of negative spirits, and you can probably sense them better than we could. Do you sense a lot of them around that area?
It's hard to say. There's areas like, if you go to Profile Rock, I feel like almost a reverence there. The atmosphere there, I almost feel like the Native American part takes over for me there. There's areas, I've done a lot of hiking in the Freetown State Forest during the day. There are areas that kind of can give you a little bit of a spooky feeling, like, tingles up the back of your spine type feeling. I can't imagine what the place is like at night. But then again, there's other areas in the state forest where I feel great. It's nature, and it's beautiful. It's a clean place. Where it has a great feeling, and you almost go back to that Native American feeling again. But there are definitely weird areas out there.
Speaking of Native Americans, I don't know if you heard earlier in the show, we talked about our upcoming Bridgewater Triangle investigation show, and how this year we're going to focus on King Philip's War and some of the sites regarding the war and the spirits associated with it. And
that would be excellent.
We're hoping that Whaling City Ghosts are game for going out and doing some investigating for us that night.
Well, we're up for it. I'll talk to Gabby.
All right, June 27th. I just checked the Red Sox schedule. So June 27th will be the date of that program. So if you'd like to join us, and if any other groups or investigators out there would like to join us, you can email me, spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com, tim@spookysouthcoast.com. We'll make sure that we get everybody on board that wants to be involved. But, of course, we love the way that you approach these spirits, Luann, and the way that you show respect and show reverence for them, and obviously it works because you get something out when you go out there.
I just was saying recently that I really would love to go back out there to visit with those spirits again. I mean, I really feel something for them, and what you said earlier in the show, and it's so funny when I actually got to come on to the show, I put on the spooky TV, and right as I came in, you said my name, and I was like, hey, what are you guys talking about me behind my back here? But
we do that all the time. That's how we are here.
How dare you? But, the whole thing, they don't teach that in schools. I was an adult, too, before I knew who King Philip was. It's like someone mentioned King Philip, and it's like, who's that? Somebody from England? Mm-hmm. We don't know. We don't learn this. There is absolutely no curriculum for that.
And the poor guy, he's more remembered for the name that wasn't even his name.
Right.
That's right.
It was the name given to him by the white man. So.
Yep. You don't hear Metacom.
No.
No.
Well, hopefully we can.
Hunter.
Hopefully we can hear him when we go out and we do the investigation. We can let him tell his own story.
Oh, I would love to meet him. I'd love to know who it was that was standing there on top of Anawan Rock that night. I'd like to think it was Anawan. He was an older man, so we'll never know, I guess, unless he chooses to tell us, I guess.
Well, we'll definitely look forward to working with you that night, and of course, anytime. And
well, great.
Thanks
for inviting us. We're excited.
Absolutely, anytime. And whenever we're doing anything like this, you're one of the first groups we go to. You know that.
Thanks.
All right. Well, we're coming up on the news. Thank you for checking in, and we'll talk to you more about plans coming up.
Great. Have a good night, guys.
Take it easy, Luann. Good talking to you.
Night.
That is Luann, the lead investigator of Whaling City Ghosts, and they'll be involved with our big show, June 27th. That'll be the date. We'll try and get some extra time here from the station as well to make sure we go full bore with this. We'll have teams out there. We'll bring you the history of King Philip's War. We'll give you an education. Maybe it's a good night if you don't usually let the kids stay up late on Saturday nights. It might be a good night to let them tune in and find out a little bit more about our local history. We had somebody call in during the break, and they wanted to let us know that this person said that they went to school in the late 80s in Dartmouth, and they attended the DeMello School. And as a fourth grader, she learned about King Philip's War as part of the curriculum there. And as she was saying, she's not sure if one teacher just had it as a personal passion that they wanted to make sure they included it, or if it was something that was town-wide or school-wide. But at least in her class, they were informed about King Philip, about the war, and especially how it relates to the history of Dartmouth, which I'm sure Aaron Cadge probably got some exposure to that as well, and that's kind of what geared him toward making these films. We have another call on the line here. Let's take this call and see who is there. Good evening. You're on Spooky Southcoast. How you doing?
Hi, Tim. How are you?
Oh, spooktacular.
Yeah, I listen every week, and I'm actually watching on the web here today. But I have a big interest in the King Phillips. I do have a bunch of the booklets. There's a series by Leo Bonafanti. It's biographs and legends of New England Indians, and he's got a whole book dedicated to King Philip about the onset of the war and everything like that. They're really good little reads. I was wondering if you guessed had heard of those.
No, that's new one on me.
I'll have to look those up, see if we can get some copies of them. And I got your email during the break, and you had actually mentioned the book about King Philip's War by Michael Tagayas and his co-author. And as we said earlier on the show, I'm actually trying to pinpoint, when I can record an interview with Michael Tagayas to air on the air, to air on the show. But we'll probably have it air during that Bridgewater Triangle episode.
Excellent.
And we'll find out more, because he actually goes out and does presentations about King Philip's War to local historical societies and libraries. And the reason I found out about his book is because he was doing something in Westport. And Matt Cost and I were reading the paper, and we just happened to see it in the calendar listings. And so I got in touch with him. And hopefully not only can we have him on the show, but hopefully we can get him to come down here and do some more of these presentations. I know he has another book about something that happened on Cape Cod, off the coast of Cape Cod, a Coast Guard incident. But hopefully we can still get him to do a few King Philip's presentations.
This book talks a little bit. It's a booklet, actually. It talks about that King Philip had a brother, actually, Alexander, who was older than Philip, and he took over when Massasoit died. So Alexander was the one in charge, but he got sick on a trip, and Philip had thought he was poisoned. Mm-hmm. So that stuck with him, and then all the hostilities started. But it's a very, very, very interesting. And when they were finally got him in the great, in the swamp, it says that he was killed by a Pocasset Indian had killed him.
Mm-hmm. For being angry that Philip killed a good friend of his, a warrior, mate of his, one of Philip's lieutenants, who suggested that maybe they should surrender. And the story is that Philip was like, "How dare you!" So in front of all these braves, to quelch the idea of giving in, he killed this guy right in front of everybody to say, "We don't surrender." And supposedly that man held a strong grudge. He lost all loyalty for Philip, and he was the one who betrayed him at the what's called Philip's throne in Rhode Island. Where's that? In I want to say Bristol. Yeah. And matter of fact, I think Brown University owns the property. But he even shot Philip himself, and then the British and quartered him and took his head. I have been told, I will not elaborate on who told me this, but the Wampanoags know where his drawn and quartered body is. They got a hold of it. They buried it. They did not. The story is they didn't get his head, but a lot of people say, "Gee, the English were so bloodthirsty. How could they do that?" A lot of people forget the English had just finished fighting their own civil war before they came over. So you had a lot of guys who were in militia groups in England committing some of the most horrendous crimes against mankind. And when that civil war ended, it ended with Charles I being drawn and quartered, having his head removed and stuck in a cage and hung in certain key points throughout London.
And after there's a little bit of more that they're talking about in the book, that just after Philip was killed, they went and they gathered up all what they called the praying Indians out of Natick. They marched them over to Deer Island in Boston, and they put them out there to starve. So it's just one thing after another that was just horrible.
How did you get interested in the subject? Was it something you learned about, when you were in school?
No, I just didn't know who he was, and I knew that there was a high school. I'm in Rosendale, but I knew there was a high school called Philip, and it was called King Philip, and I just had no idea who King Philip was, and how could he be an Indian. And then I found these booklets, which were awesome, and then I picked up some other books and just continued reading on about that, But these booklets talk about the attacks in Medfield and, how they went through, and they actually went out to western Massachusetts. They tried to get the Mohegans out there to, out towards Deerfield, but things just fell apart. They were unable to get enough people together, or enough Indians to really mount an attack on them.
And these books are by Leo Bonfanti, you said?
Yeah, it's Pride Publishing, and they're booklets, and I've bought them up in Salem when I was up there. Pride Publishing, Publications. It's Suite 12, 203 Middlesex Turnpike, Burlington. This was put out in 1970. I think there's old Saltbox Publications too. I don't know if they're involved with this, but they're just great booklets on New England Indians. There's about 6 or 7 of them.
And, we hear, if you watch the History Channel, you watch, some of these Discovery Channel programs or Smithsonian Channel programs, you get a lot of Geronimo, you get a lot of, Sitting Bull, you get these other Native Americans in other areas where, we're talking about late 1700s, 1800s, where we had more, people documenting what the Native Americans did. You don't hear enough about the New England Native Americans because at the time they were treated so poorly that they just didn't even bother to learn about them. They didn't bother to learn about who they were as a people, and basically all they did is they figured out how to get along with them, and they figured out how to use them.
Right, and what I find real interesting is the history that when the frontier was Deerfield, Mass, and all that went on beforehand, and that's what's interesting to me. I know, like you said, you see all the stuff on TV about the Western Indians, but these Indians in New England and up in Nova Scotia, they were the first ones to come in contact with the French and the British way back.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they kind of were, the first people to interact with those from the New World, and I mean, maybe it didn't really go so smoothly.
No.
But I mean, it's a very important part of history, and I think we're so embarrassed by it around here that's why we sweep it under the rug and we don't talk about it.
There was a fellow that came over around the time of the Pilgrims, and his name was Thomas Morton. He set up in what is now Marymount and Quincy. He was called the Pagan Pilgrim because he was a throwback to Shakespearean type. Because he was totally different. He kept his pagan ways, but he came over here, and they did not like him because he was able to barter more with the Indians, and the Puritans were just so strict, and he was totally different. But they called him the Pagan Pilgrim, and he was here, and they arrested him, and they sent him back to England, and he wrote a book called The New Canaan. So he lambasted what was going on in the colonies in Plymouth itself, and then up they call it Dorchester Bay Company, and he went back over there, and he kind of talked bad about them, but he made his way back over to the colony here in New England, and they ended up arresting him again, and they put him on a small island out off New Hampshire where he got real sick and he ended up dying. But he is a very interesting character, Thomas Morton, and no one knows about him either.
No, and this is what we're talking about. I mean, this is, I think, part of what our job is. I mean, sure, we talk about the paranormal, we talk about, ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, all that kind of stuff, but it's also part of our job to use this time that we're given to educate people, whether we educate them about the paranormal, whether we educate them about the history that is loosely and in some cases strongly associated with that paranormal activity.
You guys do a great job. I really enjoyed the show.
Thank you very much. And if I can make a recommendation, if you haven't already checked it out, our friend Craig Anderson has his website, ourhistoryproject.com, and it's also, you can find the links to it through the Blogspot Spooky Southcoast site. But he did a 4-part series with Aaron Cadju about King Philip's War and more of the history about it. So I highly recommend that, and definitely check that out if you've got a lot of time on your hands, because they talked for a long time about the subject, and it's a lot of great information.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for calling and for listening to the program.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good night. And if you would like to call in and share your thoughts, let us know. Did you learn about King Philip in school? How did you first find out about Metacom and what happened between him and the English settlers? Give us a call, 508-996-0500, 508-291-0500. You can also email us. All right, well, at least as far as we know, we'll still be here unless this gas gets us before we go. Until then, we want you all to stay spooktacular.